Welcome to TradeNBI.com. This is John. This report is for, well, you guessed it, Friday the 13th. So exciting. I know. I guess if you were in the Middle Ages, that would have been relevant, and if you were a Knights Templar, but otherwise, not such a big deal. It's just another Friday. More importantly, though, it's another Friday leading up to more election, who knows what. Everything's pretty much just chugging along. The clock is ticking. Market is going to, though, bounce around with this because as you get every little report, it's all going to come down to what shows up evidentiary-wise and whether or not it's significant enough to make a difference. Otherwise, the market is just going to shrug it off and just expect that a lot more money is going to flow in. From a NASDAQ standpoint, you can see it here. We've started our DOC spread, and we actually have green coming below, as well as Power Mode 2. So this is a warning, clear indications, particularly with still rising but modestly flat. We were at minus 379, 297 now from a red DOC standpoint. So looking for that, if it starts to trail over, then I think you can expect at least a revisit to that 50%, if not further. We've been in a shakeout decline, and you can see that difference between the NASDAQ and the S&P. The S&P has just been, well, this is a question of whether you think the S&P is leading or trailing. I think it's trailing what's taking place in the NASDAQ, and so I think the NASDAQ is going to become more relevant in this particular case. And, you know, there's been a lot of excitement with, you know, even what Biden's calling his transition in that, with the number of tech people in that, and the bonus that means for the tech world. Whereas I think that should things switch, you will see a massive sell-off in tech because it would put a serious threat. Because I don't think that anyone believes that Trump isn't going to want to go after big tech in a serious way after what took place. Anyway, from a euro standpoint, they're keeping it afloat. That's all they got to do. The Eurozone, though, is complete economic disaster here with lockdowns everywhere. It's pretty much stagnation, though the anticipation is they will stimulate less than the U.S. will, and therefore appreciate their currency. Isn't that a marvelous thing? I mean, you can print, you know, tens of billions, but because you're not doing hundreds of billions, or in our case, the U.S. trillions versus their hundreds of billions, it's a relative net plus. But until that starts happening, that's what's going to keep gold at the bottom side of things, because right now you've just got gridlock. Just so many good signal indications from what we see, and it's so clean. When we have these situations with the orange dip below, the back and the forth, and then, you know, the pops that come from it, and the easy way to see, like, well, in this case, a simple DOC spread was pretty clean, and then just once the tail off began from Power Mode 2, boom, it came down. But it pretty much held up fairly decently throughout most of it. And every time we got a dip of orange, you had your buy. So then it's just a matter of watching your buy-sell configurations, and we had a nice one right here with the dip of the orange. That lasted until, well, right about here, in which case we created a short dip, but you can see this is one of those that crossed early, and that's your turnaround signal right there. It's like you get your warning, and then boom, you get your confirmation, and it went up. Didn't go very far before putting in another sell signal, and this one was clean and sweet. You already had red rolling over below zeros. Green was already under it from a DOC standpoint, and you really get the strong trigger from a DOC, from a Power Mode 2, well after the DOC spread, which took place much earlier in the move. But like, again, I always talk about this orange break above, really kind of gives that triggering, and boom, it went down. You ended up with a brief short pop section, which was enough to go from 0 to 50% almost. The high peak of it came just a fraction underneath the 50%. Let's enlarge this a little bit. That way you can get a clearer idea of what I'm saying. Right there. And then boom, the steel below with the orange up is the, I want to say, just the coup de grace, the cutoff, and sure enough, that just took it straight down. And any of the little pop signals that were coming here were coming off of plus 13 reads. So every time you dip back below, you get the softness. So it was just one of those where it was one of these building red DOCs that just kept, chugging along until finally you had a little bit of the breakdown, but the DOC red kept rising within that. And then finally the Power Mode 2 cross below. Still took a while, took forever for it to even just reach that 50%, but it did it before putting in another classic DOC spread with the cyan above, the green crossing below red, steel crossing below, and orange above. All a beautiful symphony that led to new lows. And then finally, we just kept repeating this pattern over and over with the new buys and quick sells in between. So pop, sell, and that was kind of just a little bit of choppiness. But in this particular case, we were building up DOC red until it finally broke the 7.5 right about here. The reason why that's relevant is because when you're after a decline and we get caught in this -7 to -13, I've always called it the no spark zone, meaning you can get a buy, but they tend not to have the follow through that you get from either P2s that tend to build up. So we had the P2 right here, so this was the earliest portion of it, and then you had a much stronger move on this second P3 right here. That's the one that literally took off, and so you did your A, B, C move. Nice and clean. Oops. Sometimes when I grab it in the middle. There we go. So, green crossing above, just before the cyan moves below red. The crossovers happen even a bar earlier. Yes, it took me a little while to get things up and running because periodically the TS system just freezes up for no reason. But that's a different issue in and of itself. Right now we're in a little bit of a soft spell, just starting. So that's the long and the short of it for this. I think you just keep following the action. It's been beautiful. The ranges are enormous. No objection whatsoever to any of it. So all good. As always, though, trade well. We'll talk well on a Skype chat.